Good evening. Tonight we'll be continuing our series on the heroes of faith. We'll be studying Noah and Enoch tonight. So to start off, I'm going to start by reading the Hebrews 11 about it. Hebrews 11 verse 5. By faith Enoch was taken from this life, so he did not experience death. He could not be found because God had taken him away. For he was taken, he was commended as one who pleased God. And without faith it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. By faith Noah, when warned about things not yet seen, in holy fear built the ark to save his family. By his faith he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness that is in keeping with the faith. Now, where I'm going to turn to Genesis 5, and we're going to be reading where Paul is quoting from Hebrews. Genesis 5, verse 21. When Enoch had lived 65 years, he became the father of Methuselah. After he became the father of Methuselah, Enoch walked faithfully with God 300 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Enoch lived a total of 365 years. Enoch walked faithfully with God, then he was no more, because God took him away. Then we're going to skip down to verse 28. When Lamech had lived 128 years, he had a son. He named him Noah and said, "He will comfort us in the labor and painful toil of our hands caused by the ground the Lord has cursed." After Noah was born, Lamech lived 595 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Lamech lived a total of 777 years, and then he died. After Noah was 500 years old, he became the father of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And then going on to chapter 6. When human beings began to increase in number in the earth, and the daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of human were beautiful, and they married any of them they choose. Then the Lord said, "My spirit will not contend with humans forever, for they are mortal. Their days will be 120 years. The Nephilim were on earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human hearts was only evil all the time. The Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. So the Lord said, "I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race that I have created, and with them the animals, the birds, and the creatures that move along the ground, for I regret that I have made them." But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. This is the account of Noah and his family. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight and was full of violence. God saw how corrupt the earth had become, for all the people on earth had corrupted their ways. So God said to Noah, "I'm going to put an end to all people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I am surely going to destroy both them and the earth. So make yourself an ark of cypress wood, make rooms in it, and coat it with pitch inside and out. This is how you are to build it. The ark is to be 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. Make a roof for it, leaving below the roof an opening 1 cubit high all around. Put a door in the side of the ark, and make lower, middle, and upper decks. I am going to bring floodwaters on the earth to destroy all life under the heavens. Every creature that has the breath of life in it, everything on earth will perish. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you will enter the ark, you and your sons and your wife, and your sons' wives with you. You are to bring into the ark 2 of all living creatures, male and female, to keep them alive with you. 2 of every kind of bird and every kind of animal, and of every kind of creature that moves along the ground will come to be kept alive. You are to take every kind of food that is to be eaten, and store them away as food for you and them." Noah did everything just as the Lord God had commanded him. Chapter 7. The Lord said to Noah, "Go into the ark, you and your whole family, because I have found you righteous in this generation. Take with you 7 pairs of every kind of clean animal, a male and its mate, and 1 kind of every kind of unclean animal, a male and its mate, and also 7 kinds of every kind of bird, male and female, to keep their various kinds alive throughout the earth. 7 days from now I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will wipe from the face of the earth every living creature I have made." And Noah did all that the Lord had commanded him. Noah was 600 years old when the floodwaters came to the earth, and Noah and his sons and his wives and his sons' wives entered the ark to escape the floodwaters. Pairs of clean and unclean animals, birds of all kinds of creatures that move along the ground, male and female, came to Noah and entered the ark as God had commanded Noah. And after 7 days the floodwaters came to the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the 2nd month, On that day all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened, and rain fell on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. And on that very day Noah and his sons Shem, Ham, and Japheth, together with their wives and the wives of his 3 sons, entered the ark. Alright, so we're talking about faith. And when Jared came to me and said, we're doing faith, who do you want to choose? And Noah was open. So I chose Noah, but I also chose Enoch. And the reason I chose Enoch and Noah is because I think they go together, number one. And number two, the reason their faith is mentioned is for a similar reason. We see in Hebrews 11 that by faith Enoch was taken from this life, so he did not experience death. And we see that he walked with God, so much so that even though this world was wicked and most of the people in it, even at that time, were wicked, Enoch was such a righteous person that God just took him up. So, as kids we like to learn about how Elijah went up in a fiery chariot. But I also love Enoch because Enoch just got called up with God because he walked with him so righteously and by faith. And so then we see later on that Enoch's great-grandchild, Noah, also has a similar faith, just like his great-grandfather before him. He has a faith that when God tells him, when he's 500 years old, he says, hey, you need to build an ark. And Noah's like, what? It would be shocking today if God came to you and said, hey, you need to build this giant structure and then I'm going to destroy it. But what we have here is that Noah goes ahead and he builds that thing. And he does it within 100 years. So we don't know exactly how long it took him to build it, but he doesn't have his kids until he's 500. And then at 600, he has built the ark. So it takes him less than 100 years to build this. It probably takes him even less time because we know that his sons have their kids at 100, and they don't have their kids until after the flood. So we know that his sons to be able to help, would have had to been somewhere around 525. So maybe he builds this in 75 years. Maybe it takes him even less time. But Noah goes ahead and does this, even though to ask anyone to build something like this would be kind of nuts. But God knows that Noah is going to trust him, and Noah has the faith to do that. So we see just like this is the essential in our Christian life. And just because we don't know all the facts about God doesn't mean that God hasn't asked us to do those things. So sometimes we have to do those things that God has asked us, even though we don't know why. And that can be really hard, right? I have 3 kids, and oftentimes they're always asking me why. Well, sometimes I don't need them to know why, I just need them to do it. And sometimes it's for their safety, and sometimes it's so they can learn more. Sometimes it's for all sorts of different reasons, right? But sometimes when you have kids, you tell them to do something and you need to do them now, and then later you can explain why. And so we see this with Noah. God kind of does this a lot, actually, because he does it with Job too, because Job asks why, and at the end God says, because. But here, clearly, God is saying, because I'm going to destroy the whole world, and you need to be ready for it. So we see that the world has gone bad. People are being violent. There are Nephilim in those days. Pretty much everyone's heart is to do wickedness all the time. There's not even a little bit of good in them. And yet here you have Noah, who's being righteous, who is different from the world, and his faith is keeping him righteous in that world because he has the faith to follow God this whole time, even when everything else is going wrong. And so then he builds the ark, and he does everything that God has commanded him. He builds it to the specifications that God has commanded to him, and God sends him the animals, and he fills it up with animals, and then he's on the ark for a long time with these animals. Well, it rains for 40 days and 40 nights, but then even after that, it takes a while for it to dry up. And so sometimes we think, wow, Noah was this really great guy, and especially as kids, we learn that, Noah did this amazing thing. But then there's this part afterwards where he gets drunk. So we know that Noah's not perfect, right? But he still had the faith to follow God when God asked him to. So, I mean, in some ways, it's not too unsimilar to these days, although we know that there are a lot more righteous people than just one guy and his family now. We know that there are millions of Christians who worship God and try to follow Him all over the world. But we also know that Satan is very good at trying to convince people to do what they think is right, and what it ends up being is a lot of violence and oppression. And so we need to know that even if the world doesn't believe what we believe, we need to continue to follow God through our faith and to do what He has asked us. And so you say, like, what are those things that we need to do? Well, Jesus told us what those things are. They're to love God and to love each other. And we see this through our fruit. We see this in the fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. We also see it in our actions. Our faith is manifested through our actions. When we feed the widows, when we visit those in prison, when we take care of the poor. Those are the things that we need to be doing. We need to be walking justly with our God and doing the things that He's asked us. So, God may have not asked you to build a monument of faith like Noah did, but God asks you to live humbly and righteously still today. And Noah's obedience honors God's foresight, just like our obedience to what God has told us to do honors God. Obedience is essential to a vital faith. John 14:15 says, "If you love me, you'll keep my commandments." And he goes on to describe an intimate relationship with God that God desires to have with everyone, men, women, children, and where the Holy Spirit dwells within us. And so, when we're obedient to God, His schedule becomes our schedule, and His ways become our ways, and our steps, and His desires guides our steps and directs our paths. So, I hope that you learned something today. I hope that you can manifest it in your life, just like Noah. Maybe it's not building an ark, but maybe it's taking care of people in our neighborhoods. Maybe it's making sure people have housing. Maybe it's feeding the hungry or visiting those in prison. And be like Noah. Listen to God even when it sounds crazy. So show that faith, even if it seems crazy to the world, that you know that it's not crazy, because we have a God who created us and loved us so much that He sent His Son to die for us. Have a blessed rest of the week. Bye.